Yesterday, a Texas appeals court overturned the 2010 conviction of former House of Representatives Majority Leader Tom DeLay. He was originally charged and convicted for money laundering and conspiracy, but the court threw out the conviction and claimed there was insufficient evidence for those charges. In an opinion released yesterday, the court said that the evidence, quote, shows that the defendants were attempting to comply with the election code limitations on corporate contributions. But the Travis County District Attorney's Office said it will appeal this decision made in a 2-to-1 vote. The DA released a statement that said, "We are concerned and disappointed that 2 judges substituted their assessment of the facts for that of 12 jurors who personally heard the testimony of over 40 witnesses over the course of several weeks and found that the evidence was sufficient and proved DeLay's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt." Here to discuss the overturned conviction and what it says about the judicial process, I'm joined by Mark Levine, former congressional attorney and host of Inside Scoop. Mark, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So now the appeals court is saying that Tom DeLay did nothing wrong. He did not break the law. What was he doing in the first place? Can you break that down for me? And
Sure.
also, what justification the court was using to really overturn this conviction?
Sure. So Texas law has, for a very long period of time, banned corporations from giving directly to Texas state candidates. And Tom DeLay wanted to do exactly that, but he knew that it was against the law. So he very secretly allowed the money to go to a branch of the Republican National Committee. He got corporations to give $190,000 to them. He told them specifically it was going to individual candidates, which of course is illegal. Then the Republican National Committee wrote checks to 7 candidates totaling $190,000. And the court said, well, but he technically was okay because even though the corporation said they were giving it individual candidates, they could have given the money for other purposes. They could have given the money just for access to talk to Tom DeLay, which of course raises its own question of whether or not politicians should be selling access for however much amount of money. But because it could have gone for something else, therefore there wasn't insufficient evidence, and though the 12 jurors found beyond a reasonable doubt it was true, basically they said as long as you follow all the technicalities right, you can basically ignore this law.
So he pretty much got off on a technicality. And Mark, I know that you worked on the Hill when Tom DeLay was really rising to power in the Republican Party. For people that don't know, can you talk about the kind of influence he really yielded while he was in Congress?
Probably one of the most powerful members of Congress in the last 30 years. Tom DeLay was called the Hammer, and he was called that because he knew how to hammer his way into authority. He was second in charge of the House at the time. Speaker Denny Hastert was technically in charge, but everyone knew the real power lay in Tom DeLay. And his power was that he could corral all the Republicans to do whatever he wanted them to do. If it was supporting President Bush on something, all the Republicans that claim to hate spending now, all of them voted for massive spending in those days. And the way he'd do it was he'd use his power over money to make sure that candidates that supported his agenda would get lots and lots of money, and candidates that didn't would not. And I remember very clearly Robin Hayes, I don't think he's in Congress anymore, but he's a congressman from the eastern part of North Carolina. There was a textile bill that Tom DeLay wanted and that his constituents, Hayes' constituents, were very much against because a lot of textile workers in North Carolina. And I remember Tom DeLay didn't have all the votes. So he started twisting his arm, not physically, but politically, until Hayes was crying on the House floor and finally in the middle of the night changed his vote, going against his constituents to satisfy Tom DeLay.
Wow, all of this sounds familiar. It sounds like an episode of House of Cards.
Well, there you go.
As we know, Citizens United was passed in January of 2010. It opened the floodgates to corporate donations, giving rise to the super PACs. Do you think that the leniency we're now seeing in campaign election laws has any bearing whatsoever on this overturn?
Well, sure. I mean, this actually goes farther than Citizens United. I think Citizens United was wrongly decided. It said corporations could spend whatever amount they want on free speech to influence an election campaign. This allows direct donations to the political campaign, so it actually goes one further. In my view, corporations are not people and don't have the free speech rights under the Constitution, which I carry with me.
Very nice.
But that is something that we're going to have to wait for a change in the United States Supreme Court to overturn.
Absolutely. Well, the district attorneys, I mentioned this leading up to you, said that, this was originally tried by 12 juries. They listened to 40 different witnesses. Right. And then in the appeal, of course, two judges made this decision, and the majority was Republican. I mean,
it's also even more interesting than that, because, as you know, the two Republican judges found for Tom DeLay. The Democrat, who's the chief judge of the Texas court, found against Tom DeLay. But originally, the court had two Democrats and one Republican. But Tom DeLay got the Texas Supreme Court to disqualify one of the Democrats, changing it from two Republicans to one Democrat.
So the follow-up is, I mean, how problematic is
It's
that?
extremely problematic because it looks political, not legal. And this is a law that's been enforced in the past by Texas, but now to protect the hammer, it seems like they're changing the law.
And as we know, politicians are no stranger to corruption. So what kind of precedent do you think this overturn is going to set for elected representatives going forward who are charged with criminal activity?
It sets a terrible precedent. Look, bribery is supposed to be illegal in the United States, but through all these technicalities, bribery is basically legal. You want to buy a politician? It's very simple. All you do is you collect a bunch of money, and if the politician does what you want, you pay them. If he doesn't, you don't do it. You don't pay them. And this is the way it works. And corporations can raise a lot more money than individuals because they're not playing with their own money. They're playing with the money we use to buy gas or go to the store or whatever it is. It's a very dangerous precedent, and I hope it's overturned soon.
And do you think politicians are held to a different standard than the average American?
Well, I don't think bribery should be legal. And so, I mean, you can pay someone to fix your car. You should not be able to pay someone to fix the law. And that's exactly the problem in America.
And lastly, I want to ask you, since we have a little bit more time, I want to ask you about the relationship between Tom DeLay and Jack Abramoff. I know all of this was going on at the same time. Can you tell me a little bit more about
I mean, Jack Abramoff, who was convicted, and by the way, there were two other people, along with Tom DeLay, that did exactly what he did, pled guilty to it, and are now serving time for it. And you also have, of course, Tom DeLay himself admitting what he did, but hiding it at the time. If it was perfectly legal, why would he hide it? So Jack Abramoff, classic lobbyist, convicted of a similar kind of thing. He's on the other end. He's raising the money to help his clients get what they want in Congress, to pay off people like Tom DeLay. It's no wonder they work very closely together.
Well, it certainly is amazing what has happened. We'll have to see if they're able to appeal and be successful. But I do appreciate your time. Mark Levine, host of Inside Scoop and a former congressional attorney, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.